The story begins with the introduction of the main characters of the novel entitled The Cursed Emperor. The young man was the head of the Knights of the Hykran Order and the last prince of the Liefridge Empire. The girl next to him woke up before the prince and looked at him. The night seemed hot, as she had expected. And what did she expect when her lover himself had said before that he only wanted her body? But it so happened that his words came true too literally. Due to the curse that was on the young man, they exchanged bodies. This was the result of Dirk's contact with the girl in bed. Irene Chandler knew about the curse. She specifically agreed to this night to be in the prince's body and try to break the curse on him. In this case, her family would stay alive. But it was not worth showing this to everyone, because it could cause a lot of problems. The young man silently looked at the girl's body that lay before him. The girl's essence inside said that she had lived in that body for 15 years. But it seemed strange that it was not usual to see this face until now. After all, this was no ordinary girl, but the daughter of Count Chandler. She was rightfully considered one of the most beautiful girls in the entire empire and an enviable bride. In her past life, the girl was an ordinary student. But as it happened in her favorite magazines, which she liked to read before studying, the girl miraculously transferred into the body of a 6-year-old girl. It was very strange, but it happened as heaven willed. But now it is worth considering and weighing for the last time the reasons why the girl exchanged bodies with His Majesty. They were valid reasons, not whim. The novel was about the Empire being at war with Elsion for a long time, and Prince Derek was sent to the enemy as a hostage. There he was cursed by a black magician who tried to break the boy's will. But the spell was broken by the main character, with whom the prince fell in love. The spell could not be maintained. After meeting, the prince and his girlfriend spent very hot nights together and enjoyed each other. However, it so happened that the entire Chandler clan was to be exterminated by the enemies of the family. The initiator of this was to be the cursed Derek. However, this time he noticed that something was wrong with the girl's body. The prince ordered a doctor to be called. The girl's older brother tried to pretend to be a doctor and give her poison under the guise of medicine, but he was caught and was soon to be executed for trying to betray the ruler. But the emperor has actually succumbed to the black magician's curse. He turns out to be cursed, and as a result, loses his mind. The ruler orders the execution of the entire Chandler clan due to his suspicions of their participation in the rebellion. The girl was desperately searching for a way out, and finally she found it. It was necessary to give the prince a special potion for 15 days in a row. To do this, she had to first prepare it and force him to drink it. The problem was that the prince, who was clearly psychologically traumatized, would agree to take the potion. But at the same time, the young man was difficult to influence by magic, and simply could not be influenced so easily. Added to all this was his suspiciousness and tendency to see betrayal and deceit in everything. Even if she managed to explain the curse to him, he would still start to suspect her of something and try to kill her. So the only thing left to do was to act radically, take the guy's body, and use the potion herself within the allotted time. It was very difficult to do. After all, Derek wasn't very fond of women and girls. For a long time, the girl tried to seduce him, but the young man remained cold and sometimes very rude to her. Sometimes the beauty was afraid of him, but she did not back down from her plan to do as she had planned. To top it all off, his bad attitude towards her was added. But for what she had decided to do, her conscience did not torment her at all, and the girl was able to calmly carry out her plan. Although he did not like her, she went her own way. But last night, the young man called her and told her to bathe and dress properly. The girl listened to his request. But despite everything, she didn't expect much from this evening, although she hoped for something positive. The girl was already waiting for him when a messenger bird from His Majesty arrived at the palace. The messages had been awaited for a long time, and now Derek ordered a letter to be brought to him quickly from the capital. After all, there had recently been talk of the illness of one of the rulers. But despite the gossip and empty talk, everyone around knew who was really in bad shape. The mother of the empire, Liefridge, was suffering from an illness that no one could properly diagnose or determine its causes. The girl was waiting for the prince, while the boy was happy that his plan was going according to plan. The young man did not think that his beloved was waiting for him at his order, and she was getting bored alone. Finally, evening came and Derek arrived in his room. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, suggesting that Irene take the same pill that he was going to take himself. The girl didn't really like the idea, but she didn't dare refuse. In fact, there was nothing wrong with it, because it was just a birth control pill. But the couple was playing it safe. The girl also did not want to get pregnant by the prince and did everything necessary for this. In the morning, the pleased prince stood on the deck of the ship. His captain addressed him and reported that Lady Irene was still asleep and certainly not going to wake up to join breakfast anytime soon. But the captain had no idea that there was a second person in his boss's body, so Irene was now trying to find the tone and intonation appropriate to the way her crazy prince was speaking to her. Meanwhile, the prince woke up in the girl's body. He didn't immediately understand what had happened, but his attention was drawn to his personal royal ship, which had left the harbor. In the reflection of the glass was the girl's face. The prince in the girl's body began to throw a tantrum. He simply could not believe what had really happened. The maids thought that the girl was starting to get nervous because she was left alone after being taken advantage of in the night. The maids tried to calm the unfortunate woman. After all, she was not the first person that this animal in human form had taken advantage of. The prince was not pleased to hear these words, because he had not expected such fame to be spread about him. He began to suspect that Irene had done this to him. After all, before they made love, the couple had felt normal, and he was in his own body. The girl's intention was not completely clear to him now, but he should have pulled himself together. He shouldn't have aroused any suspicions in his direction. So the first thing he should do is figure out where Irene had traveled in his body and what the girl had decided to do on his behalf. The guy wondered why she had done this to him. After all, it seemed that up until that moment, the girl had simply idolized him. But in reality, he had simply bought into the scene she had played, and now he was reaping the rewards. The young man was most angry because he had specially prepared the ring to propose to Irene. But now, he somehow thought that the girl had wanted to take possession of his body from the very beginning of their relationship. At the Chandler estate, Derek, in the body of a girl, arrived at her parents' house. The maids were happy to see their young lady, but her condition wanted to be better. The girl referred to her poor health. Even when she lay down to rest, the servants noticed that the lady was feeling unwell and nervous about something. Irene tried not to attract attention, but she was not very good at it, and the maids began to whisper about something. But in reality, Derek was now reflecting carefully on what had happened to his girlfriend and why she had acted this way towards him. He simply couldn't believe that their whole life had been just a game. He was so confident in her and her family that he was preparing the wedding. Meanwhile, the girl even gave the impression that she was head over heels in love with him, and that marriage would be beneficial for her and her family. It was not advisable to tell anyone about what had happened, about the exchange of bodies. After all, the girl was good at pretending, and she had even adopted some of his mannerisms, so no one would even suspect anything. Thoughts took the young man very far. Their history of acquaintance reached its roots in distant times. Then the enemy army invaded the lands of the empire. Enemy soldiers threatened the civilian population with bloody massacre. Then a unanimous decision was made to stop the enemy's advance and put an end to the mindless violence against the townspeople. Little Derek was simply handed over to the enemy ruler as a prisoner. The boy did not want to leave the lands of his native kingdom, but the imperial couple decided to simply get rid of him and at the same time show everyone their talent for diplomacy for the sake of their people, or rather, their authority. Derek was immediately sent to an enemy country. He felt abandoned. The future seemed impossible to him, and death was closer than ever before. At an early age, the boy experienced many bad things. King Elson would not leave his enemy's son alone. Poison and assassins were the least of the threats to the little one in his enemy's palace. Servants died of treachery every night, and no one was safe. It was then that Derek realized that he had to be better and stronger than his opponent in order to protect himself and his subjects and comrades. A profound breakdown occurred in the boy who became a man. From that moment on, the young boy's body contained the spirit of a grown man. And the best way to avoid showing your weakness was to avoid showing your emotions. On the battlefield, this worked very well, and gave results. After some time, when Derek became a powerful warrior, he joined forces with the enemy of Elsin, in which he was serving his sentence, and defeated his enemies, forcing them to suffer the punishment they deserved. The young man even managed to awaken a powerful ancient artifact, the Sword of the Black Dragon, which allowed him to unite a powerful army under his leadership, which brought him to the heights of power and allowed him to rule over everyone around him undividedly. People were amazed at how fate had turned its back on this boy. He had left his native land as a hostage and returned there as a hero. A grand banquet and reception were held in honor of his return. Derek saw her on it. Irene was a beauty that could not be ignored. She was called the rose of the entire elite and aristocracy. Even other girls and women admired the girl's beauty. This girl truly enchanted with her beauty. She attracted and beckoned, making one think of what it is like for a young man to taste wine for the first time or to feel the caress of his beloved. The prince approached her and asked if he had the right to meet her. Irene bowed to him and said that it was a great honor for her to speak with a powerful ruler and a brave, strong warrior like him. But for some reason, the boy who grew up in the enemy's palace, where enemies were constantly waiting for him, found it strange to see the expression in Irene's eyes. He read a hidden secret in them, and it seemed that she was not just talking to him like that. For a long time, he was puzzled by the question of how the daughter of one of the most influential families in the empire was trying to deceive him. After all, her gaze betrayed her wariness of him and his person. He was also surprised that she had been given everything a girl could want, and yet she dared to approach him and speak. It was clear that Irene used her beauty for her own purposes. One day, he met her just as she was heading towards the main palace. Irene got wet in the rain, which had just started to fall. And it was at this moment that she said that she was afraid of the rain. He was happy to have her company. However, when she said she wanted him to keep her warm, he turned and started to walk away. Her request betrayed her true intentions regarding her plans to become the crown prince's wife and ruler. From that day on, the girl began to catch his eye very often. Sometimes her company was very unpleasant and even intrusive. She even accompanied him to visit his brother and often on walks. Irene often resorted to very direct provocations. She would talk about how beautiful any place they were in together was, and just the presence of the prince added a lot to any place. The girl seemed very intelligent to him, and perhaps she even knew a lot more about him than he had ever imagined. That's when the idea of her becoming his wife didn't seem so bad. Before all this, the young man began to think that his future wife was smart and would not try to take away his power, but on the contrary, would constantly support him and cheer for his successes in governing the state. So now Derek in the girl's body thought that it would be nice to meet his friend who was in his body. They could talk and find out why Irene needed this and why she did it. The maids emphasized that there was absolutely no need to go anywhere now. After all, it so happened that their mistress had an unhealthy complexion, and she would rather lie in bed and rest than rush off somewhere else for fun. The lady couldn't resist, because her body was very weak, and she definitely wouldn't be able to escape from the girls. The crown prince was in the body of a weak girl who had thought everything through before moving into his body. Meanwhile, Irene, in the prince's body, received news that the empress was actually fine, and the bird had brought false news. But Derek remained calm, surprising his assistant and bodyguard. It is worth noting that the girl deliberately falsified the message while still in her own body. It was simply an excuse to leave her estate and visit various places for the next 15 days. She managed to penetrate the imperial palace. But now a serious game began. It was impossible to allow the prince's own people to find out that something was wrong with him. Manners and behavior should be controlled as much as possible. Irene thought that there would be no problems with this, because she had been observing him for many years and trying to recreate his motor behavior exactly as the real Prince Derek did. There was a certain specific threat. It was that the girl's brother, whose name was Ain, worked in the palace, and it was not worth getting in his way. He could immediately solve the mystery and inquire about the truth. The girl knew that she would need to prepare for what would happen if the body swap went well. No one would try to pressure her for the next 2 weeks, and Irene had perfectly memorized the specifics of the prince's work. For a long time, while the girl lived in the palace of her friend and lover, She constantly tried to memorize who was doing what and when, and therefore it would not be difficult to imitate the prince and his lifestyle. But soon, a banquet in honor of the emperor was to be added, so the prince would take care of what to do with the organization of the reception, and this was in addition to general state affairs and the management of important areas of public life. Of Cherville came to the prince. Derek began to get nervous. After all, the man was serious in his attitude. He was always distinguished by his determination. But this time the aristocrat asked if His Majesty was getting enough sleep. After all, he had been much slower and weaker than usual all day. The man was also concerned that His Highness might be harming himself by getting little rest and working all the time. The prince was glad that his secret had not been revealed. Irene was on edge again. She thought that she could not remain in such tension for long. It would be worth sending the servant far away so that she would have less contact with him. The girl asked Cherville to find her a book. It was not an ordinary book. Its secret was that Irene herself had written it in the past, so she would definitely not find it in the royal library or on the market, and she would not return without it. Irene sat down in a chair. She thought that her secret assistant would meet the marquis at the market and give her the only copy of the book, but the servant would definitely not be there for a few hours, and the secret plan began to come to fruition. It remained to hold out at this pace for about 15 days, when the potion would run out and the prince's madness would completely pass. Then he could live a calm, worry-free life. Meanwhile, at the Chandler mansion, the servants were helping the young lady dress. They couldn't believe that she would have so many bruises. The girls were really scared to see their mistress so beaten and bruised. The prince thought about how he didn't have bruises and scratches on his body. He had to be careful that no one would guess that the young lady was unwell. He even refused to make any quick decisions on this matter. Now he was more occupied with thoughts about that evening and all their feelings before it. Would nothing have happened if Derek had not given free rein to his feelings that evening? Now he considered himself weak and weak-minded in the face of Irene. Added to all this were complaints and attempts to help from the maids. They constantly discussed what a bad person the prince was. After all, he was the one who left bruises on the girl's body, and he simply took advantage of her. Also, the young man in the girl's body guessed that tomorrow all the servants would speak only negatively about Prince Derek. Irene's family had left the city, and they would not soon learn about the gossip about their daughter and the prince. However, the girl's two brothers, Cedric and Dean, are left, and they will be the first to come to console their poor sister. They will make serious faces, although they really don't know much about such things. Irene sent all the servants away and asked to be left alone. She lay in bed and thought about which of her brothers or parents would be the first to put pressure on Prince Derek. After all, he had caused some damage to the honor and reputation of the illustrious family. For some reason, their first meeting and the moments that haunted them throughout their relationship came to mind. The prince became more and more convinced that Irene would not do anything just like that. There was a reason for all her actions. Now the boy in the girl's body was thinking in terms that were not very familiar to him before. He thought it was worth trying to insist on the couple getting married after they had had a night of love. That way he would get back to his body. Derek wondered how she had stolen his body. After all, when he analyzed the events of that day, he couldn't remember eating anything unusual or drinking any special liquid. Everything was as usual, and he didn't suspect anything. It seemed that the night had played a significant role in this. After all, they had only exchanged bodies after they had slept together. So, logically, it would have been worth spending another night to get their bodies back. Several days had passed since the body change. The girl in Prince Derek's body felt great and spent her time peacefully. She owed this to her observation and intelligence. No one even guessed. But last night, there was a chance of being discovered. That was when Derek was invited to dinner with the emperor and his wife. The parents wanted to see their child, so they invited him to their house for the evening. The girl felt very sorry to see the man and woman, who must have lost hope of understanding their son. Their faces showed no emotion, but the prince decided to break the ice in their relationship. Irene was amazed at how the young man's body worked. The emotions and physiological reactions that could influence the expression of any feelings seemed to have atrophied. It was hard to even imagine him smiling once more, or anything like that. This was understandable, because since childhood he had had to keep all his experiences and emotions inside. He had no right to make mistakes, and he did not believe that he had to show everything that was happening in his fragile soul. Over time, his spirit grew coarse. It was hard to even imagine what the little boy had to go through in his early years. After all, being a prisoner of the enemy, where every day resembled the situation on the battlefield, was too much for him. Irene forbade herself to even think about such things. After all, she didn't care what was happening to the prince. Her main goal was to protect her own family from being destroyed by Derek in a fit of madness. When the boy returned home, his assistant, the Marquis, told him that a letter had arrived from the Earl of Chandler. The young man ordered the messenger to be sent away without an answer. The Marquis assured him that this would be the fourth time. Irene thought that Derek wasn't a stupid guy, so he should have guessed by now that they had swapped bodies. He was now seeking contact with her. But it was too early to let him get so close that he wouldn't break the wood. Until the young prince's curse is broken, they must not see each other. A meeting could provoke an uncontrolled reaction. And this was now unnecessary and undesirable for both parties in order to avoid misunderstanding. If we believe what was said in the magic book, then even the slightest contact of bodies, even touching each other, can provoke the return of the essence and soul to their own container. And then everything will be in vain. The time had come to take the potion from the curse. The girl found it very bitter, but there was nothing else left. She had to suffer a little longer for the sake of the well-being of her family and her loved ones. The reverse body swap was to take place in a week. By then, everyone around would start gossiping about the strange and sometimes even complicated relationship between the prince and his girlfriend, as he remained quite cold towards her. Derek will definitely want to go back to her and talk to her after the exchange, but she will avoid his company, and he will simply encounter misunderstanding from all the people around him who will be holding the princess's hand. If they even accidentally meet, she will say that she didn't want something like this. But she was very scared and kept herself closed off so that no one could suspect anything and accuse her of something. For example, magic. The girl will keep her true motives a secret even when everything is settled. He will not offend her. And Irene will be happy that the old aristocrat's curse will disappear and everyone will be alive and happy. After many attempts to destroy Derek while he was in captivity, his worst enemy decided to curse the young man. He turned to a powerful black magician with a request to place a curse on the prince. And the young man was doomed to change bodies with the woman he would spend the night with. And when that happened, the Archduke would simply destroy the woman, and with it, the young man's soul. His plan was cunning and insidious. But now the girl was focused on lifting the curse from the boy and giving herself and him the freedom to do what they wanted, rather than being responsible for the sins of their past lives and trying to simply survive. The prince's life will continue as it did for other people. The emperor will find a suitable match for his son and create a strong family that will take over from him and continue the dynasty. From her childhood, despite her good relationship with the prince, she did not consider him as her future husband. Her parents taught her how to find a husband. It was worth constantly thinking about the reputation and status of the family. Pierre Sylvian knocked on the door. He was the eldest son of Duke Sylvian. The girl believed that this young man had a chance to become her husband in the future. But suddenly she noticed that he was not like that. The guest submitted the documents. They were letters from a messenger from the Chandler family. Sylvian met him on the way to the palace. The young man believed that it was not worth being so harsh with such an influential relative of the Duke and their daughter. Sylvian began to talk about not rejecting the Chandlers' offers and annoying them. The attitude towards the messenger indicated that they despised the family and their good attitude towards them. The girl thought that Sylvian and Chandler's families were very close. They were considered the closest to the emperor's family, and they were also quite close to each other, and even somewhat similar. But Irene had one very strong resentment against the Sylvian family. And the reason was Count Sylvian's madame. After all, she was also very beautiful. Irene felt dislike for her, and she was not going to get close to her. Madame Sylvian was the main character of the novel about the emperor. She was not like Irene. After all, if the daughter of the Duke of Chandler could just spend the night with the prince, then Madame was made for home comfort. That's why Lillian was her rival and tried to take her place in society. All Irene could do was be a decoration of the evening and society, and both wanted Derek's attention. The girl was very pleased that the boy began to intercede for her before the crown prince. The girl believed that his anger was very valuable to her, and she decided not to forget kindness in the future. But the young man was not about to end his visit now. He said he had a verbal message for the Chandler family. The brothers asked to convey something important to Prince Derek. They asked to be granted leave. Irene understood that the brothers had dared to go on strike and break the palace rules. The girl was pleased to see so many people trying to take care of her and protect her from the arbitrariness of the noblemen. Finally, the boy asked the prince if he would invite Irene to the emperor's birthday ball. The girl was confused because she had never heard of such a proposal from Derek. Meanwhile, at the Chandler estate, her brothers tried to flatter the girl. The girl remained sad. If only the boys knew who was really in their sister's body. Derek thought these young men were a little crazy. Their emotions were incomprehensible to him. Why did they want to help the girl so much if she showed with all her appearance that she did not need their help? They constantly tried to spend time with her. The prince thought, human nature is so complicated. After all, in the palace, these two behaved like predators. They were an important part of palace life, with its dangers and intrigues. And here they are different. The young men suggested a walk in the garden, because the brain worked better in the fresh air, and it was easier to get rid of the sad thoughts that were now filling her head. When the girl didn't start talking to her brothers even after that, they promised to leave her alone. However, it was important to support her at any moment. Derek was very uncomfortable in their company. Finally, Derek was left alone. He thought about how they were trying to take care of the girl. Somewhere inside his life, a forgotten feeling woke up, and he even became jealous of the way she was treated and cared for. But now Derek thought again. How tired he was of playing this pretense, and how much time had passed since he had moved into the girl's body. He wondered when she would change her mind and at least talk to him. Besides, she had done this to him at the very moment when the prince was about to propose to her. But now he had decided that even if he found out the truth, he would not be able to forgive her for such a mockery of himself. A lot of time has forced the young man in the girl's body to study documents in the library. Perhaps he will be able to find something that will shed light on her plans as to why they swapped bodies. Finally, the search yielded results. A secret drawer appeared before the girl's eyes. Derek was delighted because in it lay something like a diary, in which the girl could write down everything that had been bothering her lately. From the outside, this object looked like an ordinary book. No one would hide a simple book like that, so it's worth getting to know it and studying it carefully. Suspicions about its intentions will be finally revealed. The prince was disappointed. Instead of the precious information about the last days of Irene's life, which was important to him, the book contained photos of male actors in rather racy outfits and in rather unusual poses. Despair began to take hold of the prince. He looked at himself in the mirror for a long time and understood that it was necessary to speed up the matter of returning to his own body. At the same time, the thought arose whether it was possible to do it at all. The morning of the day came when they switched bodies. Both were pleased that the normal rhythm of life was returning. The girl thought that her friend had held on very well in her body and had done nothing to it. The servants entered Irene's room and greeted her. They saw new changes in their mistress's expression. However, they did not talk about it, and the girl thought that the prince in her body had not had time to do anything terrible and unpleasant. Irene asked the maid to prepare something simple but tasty. The girl was very happy that the lady's appetite had returned, and she was returning to her usual way of life. It was worth telling everyone this news. In the garden, the girl's family discussed how to punish the prince for his disrespectful attitude towards them and the girl. After all, his refusals had good reasons, and the Chandlers were not used to such sudden refusals. The girl came out to meet them. The family was surprised to see their former Irene, as she was before this strange incident. It was also not visible that she suffered much from what had happened in recent days. The father was most pleased with the appearance of his daughter. He noticed that she had grown into a real beauty, although it seemed like only recently that she had been in his arms, and he had calmed her down when her brothers insulted their little sister. Irene was left alone with her brothers. Their parents had gone to resolve important state matters, as their father had recently held the position of Grand Chancellor. The boys spoke of being ready to lay down their lives for her. One of the brothers was the court physician, so he promised that just in case he could even poison the young man if he continued to do foolish things. The girl replied that such things were not fitting for a court physician to say. But in the middle of the tea party, a servant from the crown prince arrived. He gave the order to immediately go to his residence. The crown prince also ordered that the girl arrive alone, without the accompaniment of her brothers. The father said that he would not let his daughter go anywhere alone. It was not even necessary to think that he would personally let her go to the house of the prince, who treated her with contempt. But the servant denied his master's words. He said that the crown prince had informed him of the possibility of such a thing. So if the lady did not arrive at the prince's palace on the appointed date, he would definitely pay a visit to the Chandler estate to talk to the owners. The girl said that her father should not take such risks. Such antics were not befitting the head of the imperial faction. After all, in the future, Derek would become the ruler, and this could worsen their relationship. The man tried to convince his daughter that it was not worth risking herself for the good of the family. The girl asked not to worry about her, because she had foreseen such a course of events, and this was in the order of things. Derek was waiting for her at the entrance to the prince's house. He carefully examined the girl and said in public that it was a great honor for him to welcome the son of the entire empire to his home. But his expression was not friendly. Later, the couple went for a walk around the estate and discussed the details of the future contract between them. The girl walked in silence until the prince himself started the conversation. He asked what she had done with his body during these days. The young man asked what she had done. The girl pretended not to understand anything. She added that she did not quite understand what had happened, and then tried to behave in such a way that no one would understand or suspect anything. "On eat anything." But the prince asked why she didn't contact him immediately when she realized they had switched places. After all, this way it would have been possible to avoid certain inconveniences and the emergence of a number of gossips. The young man was most concerned about why the girl had left him after the night together. She didn't explain anything and avoided talking about it. She had never noticed such a surge of feelings from His Majesty before, but he realized that he wouldn't learn much in a nice, gentle tone. So he switched to a loud shout. He asked why for almost 2 weeks she had been avoiding his company and sending messengers away. She wasn't scared. Irene was just aware that she might have seen his face so closely for the last time, and that's why she said she had deliberately avoided seeing him. The young man couldn't believe that he had been told this openly. The princess replied that she simply did not love him anymore. It was clear that this hurt him very much. However, the girl did not feel sorry for him. After all these years she had been running after him, and he had not even looked at her. That was the end of their conversation, and the princess did so. She didn't want to talk about it anymore, so she said there was no point in continuing the conversation, which was pointless and pointless. The prince asked her why she had been following him all this time. The girl replied that she had always had feelings for him and hoped that he would smile at her at least once and say a kind word. She added that over time, she simply got tired of it. After all, she only received gifts when all the other ladies of Derek refused them. The girl then felt like a dog trying to grab her master. And after the events of the last few days, Irene realized that she wanted to love someone who would love her back. The girl simply could not tolerate this attitude from him anymore, and simply did not want to hold on to straws anymore. Irene told her maid about everything, who had already heard everything because she was nearby, waiting for her mistress. The girl was simply delighted with her mistress. After all, she was able to say what she really thought and was not afraid. Irene had a lot of work ahead of her. She had to contact her assistant, and most importantly, she had to prepare for the ball in honor of His Majesty the Emperor's birthday. After all, the princess had to be the most beautiful. Pierre came out to meet her. The guy was extremely happy to see her because he hadn't talked to her for a long time, and he missed his friend. The conversation was slow and drawn out, and the girl understood that he liked her. Meanwhile, the prince was trying to find the girl who had left him alone in the garden. He ran and tried to find her as soon as possible so that he could talk about what had remained unsaid, his proposal to her. The boy witnessed Irene talking to Pierre. It seemed to him that the couple had begun to flirt, and he was superfluous at this celebration. He heard that the young man invited the princess to attend the ball with him. The young man insisted that he was not the worst option to go with him to the banquet. The prince would be too busy with himself, so with Pierre, the girl would finally be able to rest and relax. Along with this, Irene felt very confident and had a sense of peace with the boy. They had known each other and communicated since childhood, so it is worth paying attention to how the audience would react. Irene asked about the deadline by which she had to respond to his proposal. Pierre did not insist. He replied that she herself should choose the option that suited her best personally. He also elegantly offered to escort her to the carriage, as he suspected she was about to go to her father's house. At this point, the prince, who thought his knight was being idle, decided to interrupt them. Pierre thought about how long the ruler had been standing there waiting for them. He bowed to the ruler and wished him sunshine and all the best, as was the custom to greet a ruler in their state. The boy understood that it was time to say goodbye and told the lady that he would look forward to the moment when she would contact him with good news. This irritated Derek even more and made him jealous. The prince said that if his friend had a free moment and wanted to, they could talk. The girl would like to know certain points, but she was not ready to talk right now, so as not to say too much. The girl could not stand the tension. She began to cry loudly. The servants took her away, and before that, the prince silently turned and left. He felt sorry for Irene, and she was surprised that he did not accuse her of anything more. Irene rode in silence in the carriage. The maid was surprised that her mistress did not cry more, and she, in turn, considered the possibility that the prince would punish her family for their disobedience and the fact that she had stolen his body. The girl wanted him to go against the whole world because of what she loved. But at the same time, she believed that this was impossible, and she was trying to lie to herself again. So it was worth throwing thoughts about the prince out of her head. Instead, Irene decided to get busy preparing for the banquet. The girl ordered the maid to visit a jewelry store and look through the assortment in order to order jewelry that would match her dress. Late at night, the prince sat in his room. He considered the possibility that the girl was simply trying to take advantage of him. She had shown him her fake tears, and in recent days, he had been thinking about opening up to people more. But today's conversation clearly indicated that she had swapped bodies with him on purpose. Otherwise, she simply wouldn't have avoided his company and companionship. But there was still one unresolved issue. The young man was going to give her a gift. He had thrown away the wedding jewelry when he learned of her intention. But now, just like that, it was worth giving it to the one to whom it had the right to belong and for whom it had been prepared. The Marquis entered the room. He asked if his master had a moment to spare and informed him that a gift had been prepared for His Majesty. It was a good, fragrant, strong tea which had been delivered by a messenger. The man asked the surprised host why he reacted like that, because a few days ago he couldn't do without tea. Derek realized that this was the only habit of the girl that gave away her presence in the body. Derek ordered a servant to call the youngest son of the Chandler family, who acted as the doctor at the prince's palace. The young man wanted the doctor to examine his body and check the condition of his organs. Chandler had done an examination and taken a blood test. He would conduct a detailed study of him and would be able to tell even what his owner had been eating recently. So it was worth waiting about a week for the moment of truth. The young man began to speculate about what the girl had been using while she was in his body. She could have been using poison specifically to harm him and cause something bad or even death. For some reason, he felt like he would want to punish the girl when he found out the truth. He mentally savored the moment when she would be on her knees begging him for mercy and begging not to punish her and her family. Irene was now posing for her assistant. The girl was simply delighted with the appearance of her mistress. The mistress herself was glad that over time she had developed a taste and sense of beauty. After she came of age, her father allowed her to personally choose the clothes for the whole family when they went out. From the very beginning, she was bad at it, and many were shocked by the Chandler family's taste in clothing. But the father asked many designers to help the girl and teach her everything she needed to know. The most famous designers and fashion designers had a hand in shaping the taste of the Duke's daughter. Sometimes Irene thought of the analogy that the elite and high society were a battlefield for fashion designers and beautiful clothes. If so, then the Chandler daughter could be considered a powerful warrior in that field. But after that, it was time to choose a candidate for the banquet. The girl concentrated on choosing only one from the pile of invitations. And in front of Irene, the servant held a whole box of invitations. There was less than a week left before the planned ball. The girl made a conscious choice, which she considered correct and far-sighted. She put a seal on the letter and ordered it to be sent to the Sylvans. Finally, the girl was informed by Eves, the servant, that her mother had ordered her to come downstairs so that they could have breakfast together. To Irene, such an order seemed a little strange and unexpected. Mother and father were admiringly looking at the girl's outfit, in which she was to attend the ball. Both were very happy for her. However, one more question remained. Who would be her companion for such a responsible event? The girl asked where her beloved brothers were. The mother replied that one would join them now, and Cedric had to leave quickly for the Crown Prince's palace because he needed the doctor and his services and recommendations on the condition. Irene began to worry about what the young man had decided to do. After all, the potion she had recommended and used to cure the curse contained a portion of a dangerous toxin. The girl was afraid that if this were revealed, she would be punished. Fortunately, she had been drinking tea with the antidote along with the potion lately. She didn't want the prince's body to suffer. Even if something was found in his blood, it wouldn't be certain and precise. A strange feeling of victory haunted the girl. She didn't understand why she was so happy. After all, she didn't think she had done anything very epical. She had simply successfully covered herself and her activities. The doctor told Derek that the blood test showed nothing unusual. The prince was silent. He asked the doctor if he had found any traces of anything dangerous that could harm him if consumed. These words made Cedric look through the documents again. He found nothing, but a strange feeling haunted him. After all, one could not miss the attempts to poison His Majesty and make an attempt on him. A detailed analysis of the results did not bring anything new. Nothing dangerous was found in the blood and body, no toxins, no poisons or chemicals. The doctor gave a guarantee of the correctness of the information, but the prince could not believe it. He considered different versions. Even tranquilizers should have left traces in the body, and Chandler found nothing of the kind in the blood. Nothing should have threatened the life of the ruler. Derek thought about how incredibly difficult it would be to get the ingredients to make the potion past the guards. No one could do something like that. But then why would the girl take his body? Suddenly, he asked what the tea he had been drinking for the last 2 days was doing. Cedric was startled, having completely ignored this information. The young man had to control himself when he read the analysis and was preparing to report. It turned out that the tea helped the man maintain his stamina and be ready for long physical exertion. He did not expect that something like this would be offered to him. And most importantly, was there any hint in this? The prince began to think that his girlfriend had left him because he wasn't good enough in bed. This made him doubt the accuracy of the tests, but the terrible fact was just standing before his eyes. It was clear that Cedric was trying to laugh with all his might. But the prince was not in the mood for that. He wondered if the girl was just joking with him, or if she was trying to tell him something by taking over his body. Derek guessed that the girl was just testing him. He began to doubt her words and what she had been telling him all along. Irene had most likely left him because of a bad night and not enough affection. The young man thought he was to blame for giving her a bad first sexual experience. The girl left him because she considered him a failure. Or maybe she wanted him to marry her and propose. The young man was angry. He was going to prove to everyone that he was really worth more, and that he was by no means a failure. Cedric was devastated by His Highness's reaction and how angry he had become after this message. Irene was sitting on a park bench, waiting for her faithful assistant. He was late, and the girl had already gotten tired of waiting for him to appear. But finally, the sounds of footsteps were heard behind her, approaching her. Cedric sat down next to her and assured her that he had something fun for the girl. She would surely be delighted with what her brother would tell her now. The news concerned what had happened in the palace with the crown prince after the examination of his body. The boy told about what he learned about how His Highness the Prince took his medications. He specially prepared his body with specific drugs to increase the body's activity and endurance. Irene's reaction wasn't what her brother had thought or expected. She didn't laugh the way she should have. The girl thought she was so engrossed in the herbs that she forgot about the side effects of the curse potion. Thus, Irene, trying to help the prince, accidentally humiliated him in front of everyone. After all, news of such a thing spread very quickly. Now the girl felt very ashamed and thought about how to fix the situation. His sister's reaction disappointed Cedric. He thought that she still loved the young man, but could not simply forget him. So he began to say that there would be many more and much better boys in her life. The young man asked her to have fun and forget about her troubles. After all, he didn't want to see the girl sad and try to cheer her up, and the girl simply couldn't waste her life on useless doubts and regrets about the past. Finally, the girl was left alone. She thought about how much her father and brothers cared for her. Since childhood, they had tried to shield her from all the troubles and problems of the outside world. But as she was leaving the garden, the girl saw Derek in front of her. He was talking to the servants and menacingly asking where Lady Irene was now. The young men did not know how to answer this question because they knew about the quarrel between the master and the prince. Irene approached the group and sent a servant to run other errands. She intended to speak to the prince in person. The girl offered to go with her and talk, as she guessed the reasons. When they had left the servants, His Highness asked if the girl would like to forget the night they had spent together. The girl thought about what to tell and what it was better not to mention so as not to anger her master. She said that everything was very good. However, the fact that he was not very skilled made her doubt his experience. However, this happened even to experienced men and boys. Irene assured that she left for no reason at all, so the guy can be calm for his self-respect and not worry about his lover's reputation. The girl said that the aphrodisiac was a side effect of taking the tea. The young man said that it was difficult to forgive the fact that the girl had been drinking tea with stimulants for a while because it threatened his health. But the boy was ready to forgive her and not punish her for the offense. The girl couldn't tell the truth, because then public condemnation could fall on his head again. Then everyone would say that because of the curse he had to exchange bodies with his girlfriend and lover. If he allows such gossip and talk, his path to the throne of emperor will be greatly complicated. After all, no one would want to see a person with such a flaw on the throne, which could have catastrophic consequences. Irene was scared why he had come to her estate. The guy seemed to be holding something ready in his pocket. The girl thought that now he could do whatever he wanted to her because they were alone. But suddenly, with a quick movement, he snatched a gift from his pocket. It was a box with a precious jewel, which even had the royal insignia on it. The girl liked the jewel very much. The young man said that he was ready to forget everything that had happened and what had happened between them if the girl agreed to accept this gift and become his wife. Irene thought about his proposal. It was very serious, but the girl was forced to refuse. The prince asked about the reasons for the refusal. Irene sounded stupid, but she wanted to fall in love and only then marry her chosen one. The young man asked if the reason was that the night had been a bad one. He was so focused on this question that he didn't hear what the girl was trying to tell him, what important things she was talking about. But the prince could no longer think of anything else but his skill in love affairs. He suggested that the girl personally take part in repeating the night, and he had the right to rectify the situation and show himself. Irene was outraged by her lover's behavior. She asked how he dared to offer her something like that, from which the prince took it that she generally wanted to repeat what had happened that night. The girl began to be afraid. The girl thought about continuing to play the role of the offended and unfortunate lover. She replied that it was impossible to repeat their night. She immediately rejected this option as improbable and impossible. The princess said that she did not love him, and to do what he proposed was unacceptable to her. After all, it meant that she would have to step over herself, to mock her own honor and principles. In fact, Irene admired the prince's beauty. She thought that she would have looked at him that way if he hadn't distracted her from contemplating it with his silly remarks and thoughts about their relationship. The young man could not, or did not want to, understand what the girl really wanted to tell him. After all, it turned out that he emphasized again and again that she must confess everything to him and tell the truth. She was starting to get angry. It seemed like he had forgotten who he was talking to. The girl should have told him that she didn't really want to put him in danger, but he still wouldn't have understood. Derek asked why she refused him, even when he offered her everything she wanted. The girl replied that she didn't need any of that, and the prince asked why she had been following him around lately. The girl understood that at such moments he was simply burning with feelings, but she felt nothing for him. So it was worth telling him everything right away, despite the fact that she would like to become his wife and princess. And in general, it was hard to resist when someone like the prince of a powerful state offered her hand and heart. However, the fate of doubts crept into the girl and forced her to reconsider her future prospects. But Irene gathered her strength and said that love was a very complicated thing. She could not agree to his proposal. Instead, she promised to keep the fact that he was asking her to become his wife a secret. And the daughter of the Chandler family emphasized that her parents would also not be happy for her to connect her fate with the life of someone who had recently acted so frivolously with her. And although it was her fault, she still considered herself right. The young man couldn't stand it. He listened for a long time to her words about how she needed love, not just a relationship to have someone to have fun with. He asked what exactly the girl understood by the word love and what she wanted. Irene replied that even if she answered, he would not be able to comprehend the depth of her answer. And constant explanations were only tiring and nothing more. She was not going to tell about her aspirations to someone who was alien to them. The tiring conversation was interrupted by the appearance of the girl's assistant. It was Ain, Killian. He reported that he had been forced to delay his journey, but had obtained what he had been sent for, namely the ornaments for the dress for the banquet. The girl replied that she had indeed been waiting for him, and now she was ready to talk to him, because the matter was important and she could not wait and delay with it. She also asked the prince to forgive her and not to be angry with her for his refusal. Derek asked who this young man was, to which Irene replied that he was her faithful assistant who worked in a jewelry store, and she had long ago sent a messenger for him to have the master bring jewelry so that the Chandler daughter could choose something to her liking. The prince began to mock her out of jealousy. He said that the young man looked very young and was very thin, like a skewer for frying. To which the girl replied that the assistant was very faithful and very strong and sturdy. Meanwhile, the girl asked His Highness if he needed any further explanations. If he didn't, she could leave the estate, as she had important business to attend to and an important conversation with her assistant. The prince's nerves could not stand it, and he angrily left the company of Irene and the young man. The girl did not expect that he would offer her the place of his wife, but in fact, she believed that she was right in her refusal. Although one thing that might have been in favor of such an agreement was that if the Chandlers had become relatives of the ruling family, many of the quarrels and conflicts among the nobility would have become almost invisible and would have disappeared as a result of the marriage. Already inside the house, Irene talked to Killian. She expressed her gratitude for his faithful and professional work, and he replied that he could not refuse such a respectable lady and not help in her difficult matter. But now it was time to rest before continuing with their business, and the lady asked Eves to prepare dinner for them. In the meantime, they would talk about something pleasant that wouldn't burden them with new details and problems. When the lady and her assistant were alone, the young man sat down on the floor, closer to the girl, and said that she had become more attractive over the years. The girl stroked his head with her hand. Irene said she missed him, and the young man arrived on time as usual. The girl smelled a strange smell of perfume from the assistant and asked if he really used it, and if so, to stop doing it in her presence. The girl also asked him not to look at her that way when the servants were around. The young man said that he was an adult and could do whatever he thought necessary. Irene asked him not to be angry with her. Lady thought about the moment they first met. It had been 10 years ago. Then he had also said that he was simply delighted with her, and the girl had asked him to be quieter and treat her with respect. The girl thought about how a person who accidentally got into the novel could win over the person she needed to her side. After all, she still didn't know the customs of these places well, despite knowing the plot. According to the original plot, Hades was supposed to become the main antagonist and villain. This was influenced by his early contacts with the criminal organization and the girl from there. Now Irene will be the first to intercept him and get to know him. Lady was still very young at the time, so she had to put a lot of effort into creating the appropriate image and character. She spent nights thinking about everything and writing notes in her notebook. Thus, abandoned by his father, Ain became a robber. But his skill and craftsmanship were to come to the aid of a girl from an aristocratic family who needed it and was to receive help. For his faithful service and devotion to the cause of the young lady, the young man received support from her and her family. The Chandlers granted him a part of the forest not far from the capital of the empire, so Ain served his patrons faithfully and truthfully. Over time, he created his own group and took many different people from the criminal world of the empire under his wing. But he did not stop cooperating with the family of his patrons and personally Lady Irene. The young man reported that his sources indicated that a group of aristocrats were preparing for a grand banquet. There, the emperor was to start a conversation about the crown prince, during which some would speak out against Derek and his rule. They will insist that a prince without a peer is a very bad example for the entire empire. They will also work to put someone in the role of crown princess for Derek, so that they can continue to have their leverage. Derek with Irene lately, they may start spreading gossip about her to tarnish her reputation and status in society. After all, she was the only contender. The girl asked to carefully collect everything that was said about her, but in no way to expose who he really works for. It is also worth avoiding direct conflicts with those who are trying to harm her. The young man replied that he would be very unhappy to hear anything bad said about her. But Irene said that the banquet was coming up soon, and she should have full information about what was being said about her. Over time, the information her assistant brought her was confirmed. Archduke Cadion, head of the aristocratic union, communicated with someone from abroad. He corresponded with political forces outside the empire. The Archduke was noted for his ambitions and tried in every way to harm the emperor, to whom he was a half-brother. This man was to be avoided as a personal enemy or adversary. The man was the son of the court lady Lola, who was despised by everyone within the palace and avoided contact with her personally. Lola was from the lower class and had no support from the nobles or courtiers. She was not interested in money or wealth. She simply wanted a peaceful existence within the palace. The empress did not try to harm her, but she was suspicious, as she did not understand the psychology of this woman and her motives. Lola was different in that she knew her city, and she didn't need anything extra. After all, it turned out that she didn't know the need for anything, for which she had to pay with her humility to fate. Young Cadion regarded her behavior as weakness on the part of his mother, and the position of the empress and her courtiers as an affront to his mother's honor. So he kept his resentment bottled up inside, but showed it to no one. Soon a great war began, and the boy's life was marked by a chance to improve his situation. All his uncles, pretenders to the throne, died on the battlefield, and one morning the boy woke up as the second pretender to the throne of the ruler. Derek was sent as a hostage to the clan of mages who ruled over the land, who had thus stopped destroying cities and turning the country into a battlefield for warring parties. There he was to die or remain forever. The aristocrats realized that Cadion's chances were very high, so they expressed their support for him. In turn, Cadion, possessing information about Derek, placed a powerful curse on him, which caused him to suffer. The day before the emperor's birthday banquet, Crown Prince Derek was in his manor studying the letters that Lady Irene had sent him. She was still bothering him with her sudden change in attitude towards him. Pierre entered his room. Sylviane? He arrived with an important report regarding how the knight's commandery is feeling. When the crown prince listened to him, he allowed him to go home early today. The young man was simply delighted by his boss's generosity, because this way he would have more time to prepare for tomorrow's banquet. Derek asked if he had found someone to go to the ball with. When the knight told him that he would go there with Lady Irene, the prince could not help himself. He had a lot of experience in talking to people who tried to provoke him, but he restrained himself. This time he could not restrain himself. The young man could not believe that immediately after their divorce, she would be present at the ball with another man. He hoped that Irene would arrive there with her brothers and father. But the reality turned out to be more complicated and unfair. Moreover, he did not expect to be a rival in love affairs for Pierre. Sylviana. He answered all questions that their families had known each other for a very long time, and since childhood he had been friends with the girl and was her companion. The young man added that when he learned that His Highness would not be going to the ball with the lady, he was the first to propose to her. He had to wait, but her response in the letter was favorable, and now they were preparing for the event. The prince thought she had pulled this off while still in his body. That is, she could have specifically thought about it and pulled off the body swap scam for the sake of her future successful marriage. The prince began to feel jealous. He remembered how, even in his presence, many people complimented and praised this handsome young knight. Many girls were just waiting for the training sessions he would attend. His facial expression and character attracted many to his side. Everyone around him considered him a man of strict rules and did not think anything bad about him. Pierre was considered by many to be honest and well-mannered. Derek was now thinking about the fact that Irene had become one of those who had fallen for the young knight's charms. But the prince was annoyed that his competition was an ordinary aristocrat who had the good fortune to be born handsome. The prince wondered what kind of guys girls liked. After all, he generally considered himself better than Lady Chandler's chosen ones. They were, in his opinion, too thin and skinny. Perhaps, in Derek's opinion, the whole reason was that they could have an emotional conflict with her. And the girl was very bored with him because he did not give in to her provocations and nagging. Thoughts about such things prevented him from living a normal life. He even lost sleep over what had happened. He was disgusted with himself, but he couldn't get rid of the thoughts that his girlfriend had left him alone that night. But in reality, he thought that there would be problems when Pierre saw that loving look that only Derek was destined to see. The prince asked if the knight knew about the confrontation between Chaldean and the emperor. When the prince was left alone, he thought about why he, who had a high status in society, behaved like a child when it came to the girl and her attitude towards him. This confused him. The day of the banquet arrived. Lady Irene looked at herself in the mirror. She wondered if she was beautiful for such an event. The maid said that no mirror would tell the truth about her beauty and grace. Irene replied that Eve herself had done a lot for her beauty today. And when the ladies and gentlemen find out who did the chamberlain's daughter's makeup, they will line up to see her at the next balls and banquets. The girl's father and brother, when they saw her, said that tomorrow the entire guard would be tired. After all, they would be driving away the young men who wanted to marry the young lady all night, and there would be whole crowds of guests. Finally, Pierre arrived. He was simply delighted with how beautiful his childhood friend was. The girl asked if she was worth their being together at this banquet, and they impressed everyone with their charm. Irene asked if the young man was worried. He replied that anyone would be worried when such a beautiful girl was around. He decided to keep quiet about the fact that the prince had entrusted him with protecting the lady from enemies. Sylvian inadvertently said that the girl should have told him or given him a sign if she did not want anyone to approach her or try to talk to her. After all, the warring parties of the aristocrats would be present. The guests carefully examined the couple, Irene and her chosen one. Everyone was amazed by who she arrived with at the reception. Many began to whisper behind the newcomers' backs. The lady was becoming a little embarrassed by the excessive attention. The ladies from the other families began to gather. Irene thought about their envious glances and how they would try to divert all attention from her to their modest personas. So it was worth preparing for today's confrontation. The first swallows did not have to wait long. After all, the ladies immediately approached Irene and her cavalier. The girls asked why she did not come with Prince Derek this time. The girl and Pierre decided to ignore it. The aristocratic girls talked behind Irene's back that she had lost her last hope of becoming crown princess, and therefore decided to marry at least the count and become his favorite, having received wealth. The girl's boyfriend was angry. He wanted to go and explain to the girls that they shouldn't be throwing around such words. However, Irene stopped him. She explained that they only wanted something like that so they could gossip later. She decided to deal with it on her own. Irene asked the girls what interesting things they had discussed. They didn't expect the victim to be so open and attack them. Irene looked at the girl carefully. She said that she must have spoken too loudly, or someone felt out of place, but Pierre's friend. She said that she recognized the leader of the whole herd of girls. The chandler's daughter said she had seen the girl at one of the receptions she attended with the prince. Then the girl's parents finally bought a small house in the capital and moved there from the countryside. The girl tried in every way to get rid of the habits that were instilled in her in the countryside. She wanted to take her place in the social field of the capital, but she did something that put an end to her dreams and efforts. Then this stranger screamed loudly and pretended to have spilled wine on her dress. The girl was trying to attract attention to herself and wanted to be the center of Derek's attention in every way possible, and to force him to come to her aid. Then Irene decided to act accordingly. She pretended to have tripped and fallen. Such a game seemed much better than the one started by a girl who had come to the capital from her home in the provinces. Thus, the prince believed Irene more than the stranger. He suggested to his lady to go to the bench and sit down to rest and examine her leg. The provincial lady lost His Highness's attention and became very angry with Irene. The girl felt embarrassed when Irene finished her story. It was clear that she was rapidly losing popularity among the girls in her group, and it was worth either fighting to the last or retreating to the prince's girlfriend. Behind her back, her friends were already whispering something. They mentioned that gossip was circulating in the capital about a strange girl from an unknown village who was trying to attract the prince and get closer to him at one of the balls. Irene Chandler wasn't going to let the girl go just like that. After all, she was the one who started this fight in the first place. It was worth bringing this matter to an end so that no one else would want to do anything like that with her at the ball. The stranger attacked her and asked why she had to bring up something that had happened so long ago. The girl replied that she wasn't going to do it until they had taken out all their aggression on her and tried to humiliate her. Irene said that she shouldn't argue and shout so much. After all, despite her bad reputation among designers, the girl would receive bad reviews about her behavior in general. But she didn't immediately understand what was going on. Young Chandler explained that she had once spoken to prominent designers and told them that they would be selling their work to a lady who had a habit of spilling wine specifically on her dresses. The girl from the province was confused. She couldn't understand whether Irene was telling her the truth. After all, in the capital, it was impossible to check whether everyone really knew each other so well, or whether she was just trying to make fun of them. But Irene was not going to stop. She said that in the future, it would be even more difficult for her opponent. After all, she was going to tell something else to the designers from the capital. The girl could not stand it. Her friends asked the lady to stop because her friend felt sick. In their opinion, it was enough to mock her because she had to learn a lesson. Chandler asked what families the ladies in the provincial company belonged to. Irene did not expect them to give their names. After all, then they could suffer greatly because of their audacity. For everyone knew that when it came to a daughter, the Duke and her brothers became merciless. That was the end of the conversation with them. The girl and her beau walked further down the hall, receiving admiring glances from those present. After all, the couple seemed very beautiful, and everyone was simply delighted with it. Irene decided to drink wine. However, her partner assured her that she shouldn't do this. The girl replied that he was actually much worse than she thought. She thought that he was just taking care of her. The young man suggested that instead of wine, he bring her fruit or something simpler, such as lemonade. After all, last time she had said a lot of bad and unpleasant things to her friend while drunk. Pierre's sister, Lilia, approached them. She asked if she would interfere with the bet. However, she did not want to stay, because she felt aggression towards her from Irene. However, the girl did not pay attention to the gentleman's sister. The girl felt somehow strange next to Lilia. After all, she probably believed that Irene was constantly standing in her way to happiness with Derek. And abandoned by her brother, she must have felt lonely and abandoned by all her loved ones. But in the plot of the novel, this girl became Derek's couple, and they will happily rule all the lands after the young man ascends to the throne of the ruler. So there was nothing surprising from the point of view of a connoisseur of the novel. But Irene realized that she shouldn't feel negative towards Lily now. After all, the Chandler family will be safe from now on. The girl managed to lift the curse from the young prince, and now he is free to choose. Lily felt embarrassed. Irene noticed her reaction. The girl explained that she had not expected the Duke's daughter to speak to her so simply. For a while, she even wondered if she had been dreaming, and if it was real. The girls talked about Pierre. Irene said that many women and girls considered him handsome, but her sister assured her that he did not know how to properly express his emotions and talk to girls. Lilia said she was just delighted to be able to talk to Irene like that. They discussed Pierre, then started talking about general topics, and felt the ice in their relationship gradually melting. But the moment came when Lily dared to ask if the lady loved Prince Derek. She understood this and replied that she was mistaken, like many aristocrats. in thinking that she and the crown prince had a relationship. Suddenly, Lily leaned over to Irene and whispered in her ear that she was certain that Lady Chandler would become the crown princess in the future. The girl was surprised by such a message and the certainty that it would come true. Irene replied that although outwardly His Highness was cold towards Lady Irene, it so happened that he had shown certain signs of attention to her. For example, lately he had not taken his eyes off her and had been watching her closely since the very beginning of the evening. Chandler looked at her potential fiancé and noticed that he was dressed very formally and had a dignified appearance today. But something was missing. He was not as serious and self-assured as usual. Irene thought that the young man wanted to look good in order to draw attention to himself, and he was looking at her carefully and examining her in detail all the time. Lilia confirmed this. But Irene replied that it was hard to tell who the prince was looking at right now. After all, Lilia and she were standing side by side, and it was probably impossible to say who had caught the crown prince's attention. After all, both girls deserved his attention. It was also known about Lily's secret meetings with the prince. After all, once he even gave her a box with something precious, because she held it very carefully, as if it contained the wealth of the whole world. But when he opened the box, the girl carefully examined the contents and refused to accept it. It takes a very brave person to give a negative answer to His Majesty. Then he gave the gift to Irene. It was very unpleasant. After all, it was more like giving something useless to some vagrant, believing that he needed it more and was necessary for him. To maintain good relations with him, she had to pretend that she liked the gift and was simply delighted with it. But in fact, she even liked the gift. She was offended by who it was supposed to belong to, and she was also surprised by Lilia's reaction. She was also very happy when she saw the girl's positive reaction to the gift from the prince. At the time, it seemed strange and even incomprehensible to Irene. The guess began to creep into her head later. Perhaps His Highness was simply trying to consult with Lilia in order to guess a gift for his loved one and not make a mistake with it. Later, Irene gave the jewelry to her maid because she could not just look at it. It was difficult for her to realize that it should have belonged to her competitor, and the maid was very grateful for such generosity. So even if Derek looks at Lily, it could just seem like he's regretting his mistake in choosing a life partner. After all, Lily was very beautiful and had an angelic appearance. Suddenly, Pierre returned. He asked his girls for forgiveness for being late. Irene thought that he had returned very late because she had not yet thought through everything that was happening with the crown prince. The young man managed to bring exactly what his friend liked. She asked how he knew about it. However, he replied that he remembered from childhood what she liked, and he found everything she needed for Irene. That's what the girl liked about this gentleman. He was always open to her and kept himself in check. He had an attention to detail that the prince, despite all his power and seriousness, lacked. Pierre's feelings were reflected on his handsome face. The girl joked that now she understood why all the letters from the young beauties of the empire were sent to the detachment of Knights of Sylvian. After all, such a handsome man commanded there. Irene thought that she had chosen the right dance partner. Tonight was supposed to be perfect. The girl had been falling for the prince for so long that she had forgotten about the existence of other normal boys. Pierre, to whom the girl had voiced some of these thoughts, was struck. He asked excitedly if he could regard this as a chance for something romantic and more serious to develop between them in the future. The girl was trying to feed her beau a piece of cake when the prince approached them. He asked seriously and menacingly if she really thought it was funny. Both of them were confused. Derek was starting to lose control.